the hardest of all films to pull off. Very few people in this world can sing. Very few people can dance very well. It's a magical art form. It takes so many talented people. You've got to have actors who are great actors, but it can also sing and dance. You've got to have people who really understand how a musical works. It has to work as a story, but it also has to have these spectacular moments. One of the marvelous things about the Astaire Rogers pictures is the team in back of them. And when Astaire came in and they did that first film, Flying Down to Rio, and they realized that they had something special there, they thought, okay, we can build a series here, and we're going to put the best people on this series. Pandro Berman decided, hey, I'll produce them. So that was the beginning. It was Astaire and Rogers, and then Pandro Berman.
We had a really wonderful unit or team which we gathered together from all over to make this series of pictures with. Director Mark Sandrich, first of all.
Mark Sandrich was a writer and director of shorts, and he did very good ones, and he was very fast. They gave Sandrich an opportunity to do The Gay Divorcee, and he hit and became the primary director.
Pandro Berman, Mark Sandrich, and Fred Astaire actually developed a graph, a chart, a template. How many minutes you needed of plot, get to the musical number, how many minutes that was, comedy. They really put all the elements down in timing, and they followed that. We have to meet our characters. He has to be enamored of her, and he sings and dances.
Long as I can be with you, it's a lovely day.
Astaire did most of the choreography himself, but he did it in collaboration with Hermes Pan.
Two of the key players in Fred Astaire's career were Hermes Pan and Hal Bourne. And Hal Bourne was the pianist that worked with Fred on his musicals, and Hermes Pan was his right-hand man.
Talk about an alter ego. I mean, if you saw Fred and Hermes together, you'd swear that they were brothers, identical twins.
Daddy and Pan, we always called him Pan, not Hermes, would cook up numbers together, and they bounced off each other really, really well. And they looked alike, as people know, but I myself even made a mistake one day in the rehearsal. Somebody came in and said, oh, where is Fred? And I pointed, said, over there. And it was Pan I was pointing to, so.
Pan had great ideas for numbers, to build a number around a thought, you know. He had all that kind of, and bits of business. He was very good with business things.
All of Astaire's films, he got at least a 6-week rehearsal period.
6 weeks before the director was even allowed to come in on the set.
Hermes always used to play Ginger when they were creating the Fred and Ginger routines, which Fred would choreograph, and Hermes would play Ginger. And there's some very funny stories about, you know, crew guys walking into the soundstage and seeing the two guys dancing together and say, oh, I'm sorry, guys, and turn around walking out.
Ginger was always working on other movies, too, while she was working on ours. So actually, Hermes and Fred and myself will work out all the routines together, and then when Ginger's free, she'll come over and Hermes will teach her the routines, which is exactly what the format was for all the subsequent pictures.
And in the final product, Pan would actually dub Ginger's taps. Most stars in that day didn't dub their own taps. Fred, of course, did. But Pan dubbed Ginger's taps, and he may even have done it in high heels.
In addition to that, they used a cameraman named David Abel over and over again on these films, who really got a sense of kind of the rhythms of the Astaire Rogers pictures and how to light them in the best way possible. They had various writers on these films, but the one writer who kind of stands out and carries through most of the series is a guy named Alan Scott, who was very good, I think, with the comedy elements.
Oh, rack your brains, please. Couldn't you have met that girl someplace else before?
Well, I could have met her in Moscow.
In Moscow. Well, you see?
But I've never been to Moscow.
You had the classic musical comedy plot, which is boy meets girl, boy chases girl, boy temporarily loses girl.
They fall in love, they have another disagreement, and then, of course, they dance.
And then they had all these character actors that they plugged into the mix as well. Eric Blore and Eric Rhodes and Helen Broderick and Edward Everett Horton.
Each one of them shines in their own right. Without Eric Blore, without Edward Everett Horton, there's a piece missing. It's just this one miraculous, seamless group.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I really did not want to kill you. You must forgive me.
I forgive you.
Oh!
Go right ahead, boys. Don't mind me.
And then also, they got the opportunity to work with some of the greatest composers in American music of the entire 20th century, not just of the 1930s. We're talking about people like Irving Berlin.
Like most composers, Berlin really liked what Astaire did with his songs, both musically and in terms of the lyric.
All 5 songs from Top Hat were on the top 10 at one time.
No strings, no connections, no ties to my affections. I'm fancy-free and free for anything you fancy. Isn't this a lovely day to be caught in the rain? Though I'm putting on my top hat, tying up my white tie, brushing off my tails. Oh, I love to go out fishing in a river or a creek, but I don't enjoy it half as much as dancing cheek to cheek.
Come to the casino and hear them play the piccolino.
One of the great contributions of these films was certainly the art direction. The head of the art department at RKO was a man named Van Ness Poglaze, but he was really the overseer of everything. Other people did a lot of the work, mostly a guy named Carol Clark. They came up with spectacular Art Deco sets that simply raised the fantasy level and the escapist level of the films.
It's Astaire Rogers land. Venice didn't look like that. It looks like a theme park. It's a world all its own, which they fit perfectly within. They are as elegant and as stylized as their surroundings are.
And the main reason that they were able to put this team together was Astaire. Everybody wanted to work with Fred Astaire. Without question, Fred Astaire changed the way that people thought about how dance should be seen on the screen.
When Fred Astaire insisted on having control, not just input, but control over what he did, I think he really set films in general and musicals in particular on a different course than they might have gone.
Before him, particularly because of the influence of the Busby Berkeley numbers in the Warner Brothers films, there was a feeling that you needed to have a lot of cuts in the dance to focus in on specific aspects of the dance, like the dancer's feet and so forth. Once Astaire becomes the creative genius behind the films, then you see a movement backward to a much more simple, pure, classical kind of way of shooting the films so that you see the dancers in full figure. You see the tops of their heads, you see their feet. The camera simply follows them.
I interviewed Hermes Pan and asked him about the camera work. He said, that was Fred. You know, right from the beginning. He said, either I'm going to dance or the camera's going to dance, and I'm going to dance.
He wanted the camera to be one of his partners.
Fred Astaire wanted to recreate what he was doing on stage, what he learned from vaudeville, which was he's in a room entertaining people, and there's a thought and there's an image that he's creating, and he's continuing it and keeping people enthralled and wrapped up in his storytelling. And I think that's what he wanted to recreate with film, the continuous shot, the Robert Altman of dance, if you will.
Very unlike MTV. which can make a dancer out of practically someone that doesn't dance at all, because there are a lot of quick cuts, one after the other, after the other. Do one move, cut, do another move, cut, 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 cut. No, Fred liked to do, ideally, from beginning to end.
What that did was it forced directors and cameramen and choreographers to think differently, and audiences to think differently. That it was not about fragmentation, it was about performance.
Fred Astaire's solo number is a very unique piece.
I just got an invitation through the mail.
It comes from a number that he did called Say Young Man of Manhattan, which was a great success for him. The shooting down makes us laugh. Nobody ever did that. First of all, it's a bit of humor. It's also out of sync. The number's so rhythmic that that's one of the few times Fred improvised. He very rarely ad-libbed or improvised. He does that. They had made 13 canes, and to try to get the long takes that he did, he would get mad and he'd break them over his knee. So everybody's sitting there, we got one more, and he did the last take with the last cane.
Sometimes when you talk about Fred and Ginger, a lot of the slant goes more towards Fred because he was actually in the room creating all the numbers. Ginger was very often doing other movies while Fred was preparing their next musical because she really wanted to be an actress, not just known as musicals, but she wanted to flex her muscles in comedy and drama.
I think Ginger Rogers was Astaire's best partner. She really understood that the acting continues when the dancing is on.
Ginger Rogers is the glue that held Fred and Ginger together. The believability between their characters was possible because of Ginger Rogers' acting.
She knew how to play with Fred, and she knew how to tell the story.
There were many times where she just had to stand there and be sung to.
You were going on your way, now you've got to remain.
Those special, intimate moments where the camera just pulled in and you saw everything that she was feeling, and it made every woman out there want to be sung to by Fred Astaire.
They broke and oh, what a break for me.
And I think the reason so many women have fantasized over the generations about dancing with Fred Astaire is that Ginger Rogers so successfully conveyed the impression that dancing with him was about the most thrilling experience imaginable.
Katharine Hepburn said, Fred gives Ginger class, and Ginger gives Fred sex, which I think is exactly right. You've got this guy who kind of looks a little, maybe not your classic leading man, and you have this woman who is absolutely gorgeous, who is just falling in love with him. And it's the perfect balance.
She was the vinegar to his sugar. She brings out the twinkle in his eye. She really does.
They were able to fall in love through dance.
All I know is that it's heaven. I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak.
Fred and Ginger just brought an ease and a romance to the movie musical. It was something unique.
In a letter that Daddy wrote to Aunt Deli during the shooting of Top Hat, he refers to the cheek-to-cheek number. He says, I only have one shot this morning. The rest of the day I'll spend rehearsing cheek-to-cheek. A swell tune, sort of different. It's a cross between The Last Roundup and Night and Day. Has no verse. The chorus runs something like 72 bars. Figure that out.
When we're out together dancing cheek to cheek.
One of the things that drove Astaire crazy often was Ginger Rogers' costumes.
The feather dress was a big problem for Mr. Astaire. But it's a beautiful dress, and Ginger loved it.
She was right, looked fabulous, and it moved. She didn't have to, I mean, she was encased in movement.
But the problem was when they went to dance in it, the feathers kept coming off of it and getting on the floor and causing problems for the cameraman. And if you look closely at the number, you will occasionally see a feather in the shot fly off the dress.
Those feathers flew everywhere, and they got up Daddy's nose and in his eyes and on his clothes.
So he was miffed. He said, you know, stop, stop, there are feathers all over me. She said, oh, please, it's not much.
Caused a lot of trouble, but it was worth it in the long haul.
It became a good joke because Hermes and Fred both then took the song Cheek to Cheek and rewrote it and used to sing, feathers, I see feathers, and she'd laugh.
And then the wonderful capper of the story is, after the movie was released, Fred gave Ginger a little feather charm and wrote a thank you note and said, you were right.
Top Hat is fourth of the Astaire Rogers pictures. For a lot of people, it is the quintessential Astaire Rogers picture.
The series is defined. The genre, the dance musical, is defined with Top Hat.
Top Hat became an absolute blockbuster, one of the most successful films of the entire 1930s, and far and away the most successful film in the history of RKO up to that point.
And of course, the whole RKO series was in the height of the Depression. It started in 1933, went up through 1939, and that's exactly what the country was needing at the time, escapism. And Fred and Ginger were a big part in making people feel good.
We live in such a cynical time that it may be hard for some people, younger people, to really appreciate what these films did for audiences then and still do for audiences that discover them today, which is to make you feel better. They make you feel better about life. They make you feel better about yourself because they lift your spirits. And some people dismiss that as mere escapism or as mere fluff. I don't think there's anything mere about it. I think it's art of the highest quality.